Arizona's real estate market is teetering on the edge of catastrophe. For years, the state has been celebrated as America's land of opportunity. Sun-drenched suburbs, explosive population growth, and home values that seem destined only to climb. Retirees flooded in from California. Remote workers traded cramped apartments for sprawling desert estates. Investors snatched up properties like lottery tickets, convinced the boom would never end. But beneath the glittering surface of record-breaking sales and bidding wars lies a slow-burning fuse that's about to ignite. Water scarcity is no longer theoretical, it's reshaping entire communities. Mortgage rates have more than doubled since 2021, freezing out first-time buyers and leaving sellers stranded. Speculation has inflated prices far beyond what local incomes can sustain, creating ghost neighborhoods of empty investment properties. Climate insurance costs are skyrocketing as extreme heat and wildfire smoke become annual certainties. The pillars holding up Arizona's housing market aren't just cracking, they're crumbling in real time, and the consequences will be impossible to ignore. What follows are the 9 Arizona cities most vulnerable to a devastating home price crash as the economic reality of 2026 collides with years of unsustainable growth.
Number 9. Kasa Grande. On the surface, Kasa Grande appears to be a textbook American success story, a small city between Phoenix and Tucson that transformed itself into a logistics hub, attracting warehouses, distribution centers, and thousands of blue-collar jobs. The median home price surged from $185,000 in 2019 to $348,000 by late 2023, fueled by buyers priced out of Phoenix and investors betting on industrial growth. New subdivisions sprouted across former cotton fields, marketed as affordable alternatives to the metro chaos. In reality, Kasa Grande is a pressure cooker of structural fragility maxed by temporary momentum. Over 63% of home purchases in 2022-2023 were by out-of-state investors and institutional buyers, creating a market utterly detached from local wages. The median household income is just $54,000, meaning the typical home now costs 6.4 times what residents actually earn. The warehouse boom is already showing cracks. Amazon announced layoffs at its fulfillment center in early 2024, and rising interest rates have slowed e-commerce growth nationwide, threatening the very jobs that justified the housing frenzy. Water is an existential threat. Kasa Grande relies on dwindling Colorado River allocations and overpumped groundwater, with scientists warning that agricultural cutbacks could devastate the local economy within 5 years. Worse, many of these new homes are cheaply built tract housing designed for quick investor turnover, not long-term livability in 115-degree summers. When the recession hits and institutional investors dump properties en masse, Kasa Grande won't have the income base or infrastructure to absorb the shock. Home prices could plunge 30% or more, leaving working families trapped in suburban ghost towns built on sand and speculation.
Number 8. Surprise. Surprise markets itself as the quintessential Arizona retirement paradise. Pristine golf courses, age-restricted communities, and a name that evokes pleasant discovery rather than harsh reality. The city's population exploded from 30,000 in 2000 to over 150,000 today, with home prices climbing 89% between 2020 and 2023 alone, reaching a median of $465,000. Real estate agents paint it as a haven for Midwestern retirees seeking sunshine and low taxes, a place where every day feels like vacation. Beneath the surface, Surprise is a demographic time bomb wrapped in a water crisis. Nearly 34% of its population is over 65, creating a housing market almost entirely dependent on a single generation's wealth. Wealth increasingly strained by inflation, healthcare costs, and stock market volatility. The city's explosive growth was fueled by cheap borrowing and speculative building. Over 12,000 new homes were constructed between 2021 and 2023, far outpacing organic demand. Now, inventory is piling up.
Days on market have doubled since mid-2023, and sellers are quietly dropping prices to avoid being left holding properties in a market where the buyer pool is literally aging out. Water restrictions are tightening. The Arizona Department of Water Resources has warned that West Valley cities like Surprise face severe cutbacks by 2026, threatening landscaping, pools, and the very desert oasis lifestyle that justified the premium prices. Climate realities are brutal. Summer temperatures routinely exceed 118 degrees, making outdoor activities unbearable, and air conditioning costs crippling for retirees on fixed incomes. When the next recession forces baby boomers to liquidate assets to cover medical bills or assisted living, Surprise will be flooded with inventory from desperate sellers with no younger buyers to replace them. A perfect storm for a sharp, unforgiving price collapse.
Number 7. Buckeye. Buckeye has been hailed as America's fastest-growing city for multiple years running, a sprawling expanse of new construction west of Phoenix where farmland transforms into subdivisions almost overnight. The population rocketed from 6,500 in 2000 to over 115,000 today, with developers promising affordable homeownership and modern amenities just a commute away from Phoenix's job centers. Median home prices jumped from $245,000 in 2019 to $438,000 by late 2023, attracting waves of first-time buyers and investors chasing appreciation. Dig a little deeper, and Buckeye reveals itself as a masterclass in unsustainable sprawl, built on borrowed water and borrowed time. The city sits at the absolute end of the Central Arizona Project Canal System, making it first in line for water cuts when Colorado River allocations shrink, which they will. State officials have already flagged Buckeye's water certificates as questionable for thousands of approved housing units, meaning entire planned neighborhoods may never be legally inhabitable. The commute reality is punishing. Workers face 60 to 90-minute drives each way to Phoenix or Goodyear, burning $400 to $600 monthly in gas and vehicle costs that weren't factored into those affordable mortgage payments. The area lacks basic infrastructure, limited grocery stores, few quality schools, almost no entertainment or healthcare facilities, forcing residents into car-dependent existences in a city that feels more like an isolated housing depot than a community. Over 41% of Buckeye homes are owned by absentee landlords and investors who bought in bulk, meaning when prices dip, they'll flee simultaneously, creating a cascading sell-off. Climate risk is severe. Extreme heat, dust storms, and poor air quality make summers nearly unlivable without constant air conditioning, while wildfire smoke from surrounding desert and mountain blazes has become an annual certainty. When a recession hits and remote workers return to offices, or when water restrictions make daily life untenable, Buckeye will transform from boomtown to cautionary tale, a graveyard of overpriced stucco boxes stranded in the desert, with home values plummeting 35% or more as reality overtakes the illusion of sustainable growth. Number 6. Maricopa. Maricopa positioned itself as the ultimate affordable alternative to Phoenix, a master-planned city in the desert between Phoenix and Tucson, offering new construction homes at prices working families could manage. The population surged from 1,000 in 2000 to over 62,000 today, with median home prices climbing from $208,000 in 2019 to $391,000 by 2023. Young families, priced out of Chandler and Gilbert, poured in, lured by promises of good schools, community parks, and equity-building home ownership. In reality, Maricopa is an isolated island of debt with no economic foundation to support its housing prices. The city has virtually no major employers. Over 78% of working residents commute elsewhere, primarily to Phoenix, 35 to 50 miles away, turning daily life into an exhausting, expensive grind. Gasoline costs alone can exceed $550 monthly for families with 2 working parents, negating any perceived savings from lower home prices.
The area's infrastructure is skeletal: limited healthcare, struggling schools with high teacher turnover, and a retail landscape dominated by chain fast food. Water is the crisis nobody wants to discuss. Maricopa draws from the Central Arizona Project and groundwater, both under severe stress, with agricultural users and residential developers battling over increasingly scarce supplies. The city approved thousands of housing permits during the boom with zero guarantee of long-term water availability, creating a scenario where homeowners might literally be told to stop watering lawns or face rationing. Over 39% of homes were purchased by investors during 2021 to 2023, many converted to rentals that are now sitting vacant as rental demand cools. Climate extremes are worsening. Temperatures above 115 degrees for weeks at a time, combined with dust storms and flash flooding from monsoons, make the environment actively hostile. When economic pressure forces families to recalculate the true cost of living in Maricopa, mortgage plus commute plus utilities plus isolation, the exodus will be swift and merciless, sending home prices into a brutal 30 to 40% nosedive as the city's mirage of affordability evaporates under the desert sun. Number 5. Goodyear. Goodyear bills itself as the perfect blend of suburban tranquility and economic vitality, a West Valley city anchored by aerospace manufacturing, spring training baseball, and master-planned communities with names like Palm Valley and Estrella. The median home price soared from $285,000 in 2019 to $482,000 by late 2023, driven by families seeking top-rated schools and proximity to Phoenix jobs without the density. Marketing materials showcase lakeside parks, golf courses, and a small-town feel with big city access. Beneath the surface, Goodyear is a single industry town dressed up as a diversified economy, vulnerable to shocks that could unravel everything overnight. Over 45% of the city's employment base is directly or indirectly tied to aerospace, particularly the massive manufacturing facilities that depend on federal defense contracts and commercial aviation demand. When defense budgets tighten or airlines cut orders during recessions, layoffs ripple through the entire community. This already happened in 2020 when thousands lost jobs, and it will happen again when 2026's economic slowdown hits. The housing market is dangerously over-leveraged. Nearly 36% of homes were purchased by investors during the pandemic boom, many now listed as short-term rentals that are seeing vacancy rates climb and nightly rates drop as travel demand cools. Water scarcity is acute. Goodyear depends on Colorado River water that's vanishing, and the city's lush landscaping, artificial lakes, and golf courses consume absurd quantities in a region receiving less than 8 inches of annual rainfall. Municipal officials have quietly begun planning for mandatory cutbacks, but homeowners expecting permanent green lawns and full pools are in for a shock. Climate insurance costs have spiked 47% since 2022 as insurers reprice risk for extreme heat, hail, and dust storm damage. When aerospace layoffs collide with rising costs, investor exits, and water restrictions, Goodyear's home prices won't just decline, they'll crater, revealing a city that bet everything on an illusion of stability that was never built to withstand the harsh realities of desert life in a contracting economy. Number 4. Queen Creek. Queen Creek is the darling of Phoenix's suburban expansion, a town that evolved from rural farmland to one of Arizona's fastest-growing communities, celebrated for new schools, family-friendly amenities, and the quality of life that seemed to justify premium prices. The median home price rocketed from $312,000 in 2019 to $563,000 by 2023, attracting affluent professionals willing to pay top dollar for space, safety, and highly rated schools. Real estate agents market it as the pinnacle of Arizona living, where kids ride bikes on quiet streets and parents enjoy mountain views from sprawling backyards. In reality, Queen Creek is a powder keg of overvaluation built on speculative excess and geographic isolation. The town sits at the far southeastern edge of the Phoenix metro, forcing most workers into soul-crushing commutes of 45 to 75 minutes each way to job centers in Scottsdale, Phoenix, or Tempe. Gasoline and vehicle wear can cost families $600 plus monthly, turning affordable luxury into an expensive trap. The boom was fueled by historically low interest rates and builder incentives that are now gone. Buyers who purchased in 2021 to 2022 at 3% mortgage rates are underwater if they need to sell. And new buyers at 7+% rates simply cannot afford the same homes, creating a standoff where inventory stagnates. Over 28% of Queen Creek homes were bought by investors and converted to rentals, but rental demand is softening as remote workers relocate and economic uncertainty grows. Water is the existential threat everyone ignores. Queen Creek relies on groundwater and shrinking Central Arizona project allocations, with no sustainable long-term plan for the 65,000-plus residents already there, let alone the tens of thousands more in planned developments. The Arizona Department of Water Resources has raised red flags about uncontrolled growth in the area, warning that wells are drying up and surface water is unreliable. Climate realities are punishing. Summer temperatures above 116 degrees, combined with haboobs and flash flooding, make the environment increasingly unlivable. When recession forces families to prioritize necessity over aspiration, Queen Creek's distance, costs, and water uncertainty will trigger a mass reassessment. Home prices could plunge 35% or more as the shiny veneer of suburban perfection reveals itself to be an expensive, isolated illusion built on sand and hope. Number 3. Gilbert. Gilbert has long been celebrated as one of America's best places to live, a Phoenix suburb that transformed from agricultural town to affluent family haven, consistently ranking in national surveys for safety, schools, and quality of life. The median home price surged from $348,000 in 2019 to $612,000 by late 2023, driven by tech workers, remote professionals, and families willing to pay premium prices for top-tier schools and low crime. Developers market it as the ultimate Arizona dream: tree-lined streets, heritage parks, and a downtown that evokes small-town charm. Dig a little deeper, and Gilbert is a monument to overvaluation and dependency on economic trends that are already reversing. Over 62% of the housing stock consists of single-family homes priced above $550,000, putting them out of reach for 87% of local workers based on median incomes of $91,000. The buyers propping up these prices were remote tech employees fleeing California during the pandemic, many earning Silicon Valley salaries while living in Arizona. But return-to-office mandates are decimating that demographic. Tech layoffs in 2023-2024 hit over 260,000 workers nationwide, and many Gilbert homeowners are discovering they cannot afford their mortgages without those inflated coastal paychecks. The city's infrastructure is buckling under growth. Schools are overcrowded despite new construction. Traffic on major corridors like Val Vista and Williams Field has become gridlocked, and water stress is mounting as the East Valley faces tightening Colorado River allocations and falling groundwater tables. Over 33% of Gilbert homes were purchased by investors during 2021-2023, creating artificial demand that inflated prices beyond sustainability. Climate costs are skyrocketing. Homeowners' insurance premiums jumped an average of 41% since 2022 due to extreme heat, hail damage, and monsoon flooding, while electricity bills for cooling 3,000-plus square foot homes regularly exceed $450 monthly in summer. The tax base is fragile. Gilbert depends heavily on sales tax and development fees, both of which collapse during recessions, threatening municipal services and property values simultaneously. When economic reality forces tech workers to sell and relocate, when investors dump properties into a saturated market, and when middle-class families realize they cannot afford the Gilbert lifestyle anymore, the crash will be swift and merciless, a 30 to 40% price drop that transforms America's best suburb into a cautionary tale of what happens when a community's entire identity is built on unsustainable wealth and borrowed prosperity. Number 2. Chandler. Chandler represents the ultimate Arizona success story, a city that evolved from agricultural roots to become a global tech hub, home to Intel, microchip technology, PayPal, and thousands of high-paying jobs that seem to guarantee perpetual prosperity. The median home price exploded from $365,000 in 2019 to $627,000 by 2023, with luxury neighborhoods like Ocotillo and Fulton Ranch commanding prices above $800,000. The city markets itself as sophisticated, educated, and economically diversified, a place where innovation meets desert lifestyle. In reality, Chandler is a ticking bomb of single-industry dependence masked by recent success, vulnerable to global economic shifts that will decimate its housing market overnight. Over 54% of Chandler's employment base is directly or indirectly tied to semiconductor manufacturing and tech, sectors facing catastrophic headwinds. The CHIPS Act funding is already being questioned by new federal leadership, threatening billions in planned expansions. Global semiconductor demand is cyclical and brutal. When recessions hit, chip orders collapse and layoffs follow within months. Intel alone employs over 12,000 workers in Chandler, and the company has already announced global workforce reductions and project delays. When those jobs disappear, the domino effect will obliterate housing demand. Home ownership costs are obscene relative to fundamentals. A $627,000 home at 7% interest requires a household income of $165,000 plus to afford safely, yet the median Chandler household earns just $95,000, meaning the market is held up entirely by dual-income tech couples, the exact demographic being decimated by layoffs. Over 41% of homes were purchased by investors and converted to rentals or short-term vacation properties, creating artificial scarcity that inflated prices while actual residents struggle to buy. Water is the crisis nobody can solve. Chandler's semiconductor fabs consume billions of gallons annually, competing directly with residential users for dwindling supplies, and state regulators are already discussing mandatory cutbacks that could force industrial users and jobs to relocate. Climate costs are devastating. Homeowners' insurance premiums have increased 52% since 2022, while summer electricity bills for cooling average $520 monthly, costs that low- and middle-income renters cannot sustain. The tax structure is fragile. Chandler's municipal budget depends on sales tax from retail and commercial development, both of which crater during recessions, forcing service cuts and higher property taxes exactly when residents can least afford them. When tech layoffs accelerate, when investors panic sell into a falling market, and when water and climate realities make daily life unsustainable, Chandler's home prices won't just decline, they'll collapse in a sharp, brutal plunge of 40% or more, leaving thousands of families trapped in underwater mortgages in a city whose entire identity was built on the illusion of perpetual growth and prosperity that never had a foundation solid enough to survive the harsh realities of a global economic reckoning. Number 1. Scottsdale. Scottsdale is the crown jewel of Arizona real estate, a city synonymous with luxury, exclusivity, and wealth, where multi-million-dollar estates sprawl across the McDowell Mountains and downtown glitters with high-end galleries, resorts, and nightlife. The median home price soared from $615,000 in 2019 to a staggering $935,000 by late 2023, with properties in Paradise Valley, Silverleaf, and DC Ranch routinely selling for $3 to $8 million. It markets itself as a global destination for affluence, a place where celebrities, executives, and retirees live the ultimate desert fantasy. Beneath the surface, Scottsdale is the most dangerously overleveraged, water-starved, climate-vulnerable city in Arizona, a monument to excess built on a foundation that cannot possibly hold when reality intrudes. Over 68% of luxury home purchases in 2021 to 2023 were by out-of-state buyers and foreign investors, many using properties as vacation homes or speculative assets that sit empty most of the year, creating a market utterly disconnected from local economic fundamentals. The city has virtually no middle class. Median household income is $88,000, yet the median home costs over 10 times that, meaning prices are sustained entirely by wealthy outsiders whose fortunes are tied to volatile stock markets, crypto, tech equity, and other assets that evaporate during recessions. Water scarcity is an existential crisis. Scottsdale depends on Colorado River allocations that are being slashed, and the city has already cut off water supplies to neighboring communities, triggering lawsuits and regional hostility. Luxury homes with sprawling lawns, multiple pools, and water features consume unconscionable quantities in a region receiving 7 inches of annual rainfall. And when mandatory cutbacks hit, the lifestyle that justified those prices becomes impossible to maintain. Climate change is making Scottsdale unlivable. Temperatures above 118 degrees for extended periods, wildfire smoke from surrounding forests, and air quality so poor that outdoor activities are dangerous for weeks at a time. Homeowners insurance costs have skyrocketed 61% since 2022, with many luxury properties now uninsurable at reasonable rates, while monthly cooling costs for 5,000-plus square foot estates regularly exceed $800. The tax base is a mirage. Scottsdale depends on tourism, luxury retail, and property taxes from high-value homes, all of which collapse simultaneously during recessions when wealthy buyers stop traveling, stop spending, and stop buying real estate. Over 47% of Scottsdale's luxury inventory is currently owned by investors, many over-leveraged with expensive financing that only worked when appreciation was guaranteed. When that ends, the sell-off will be catastrophic. The city approved thousands of new luxury units during the boom, with no sustainable water plan, creating a scenario where residents might face rationing, brown lawns, and empty pools, destroying the very image that commanded premium prices. When recession hits, when stock markets tumble, when water runs out, and when climate realities make desert living unbearable, Scottsdale will experience the most spectacular housing crash in Arizona history, a 50+% collapse that will expose the city as nothing more than a beautiful, expensive illusion built on vanishing water, borrowed wealth, and the desperate belief that luxury could somehow exempt itself from the brutal laws of nature and economics that govern everyone else.